I invite you to turn in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, where we were a moment ago. We're going to pick up where Janet left off at verse 9. If you're following in the Pew Bible, it's page 1048. If you're following in your own Bible, I don't know what page it is. You'll just have to figure that one out. Somewhere in the middle. So Ecclesiastes chapter 12, we'll read verses 9 through 14, but we'll start with 9 and 10 today. Not only was the teacher wise, but also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and he searched out and he set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. This is the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, and if you've been paying attention, especially if you've been at all the series, all the sermons through this series that we've gone through, you'll notice that today's text marks a shift. Up until this point, Solomon has always referred to himself in the first person. We read in the first chapter, I, the teacher, was king over all Israel and Jerusalem. It's a first person perspective throughout the entire book until right here. And right here it shifts from the third person to the third person, saying, the teacher did this, the teacher did that. Why do you think that shift occurs? Well, if you want to see the last thing that Solomon himself wrote, look back up at verse 8 there in the Bible, and look at the very last word of the very last thing that he wrote. Meaningless. Or some of your translations may read vanity. Solomon gives us an honest assessment here. If that has to characterize his book, it's fair. He spends the entire book and says many times, everything is meaningless. Everything is vain. His effort is to find the meaning of life. That's what this whole book's about. He's trying to find the meaning of life. And in the end, he says, meaningless, vanity. But just because his search is meaningless doesn't mean that it's worthless. I had a friend who told me, John, everybody is good for something, even if it's serving as a bad example. Something interesting to keep in mind there. Everybody's good for something. Now, I don't think that's true of Ecclesiastes. And what it says in verse 10, verse 10, it says that what he wrote is upright and true. That there are some good things that we can learn here. Solomon does teach us wisdom for our immediate context, but he teaches us something else. He teaches us that, that there's even something for us to hope for bigger in the life yet to come. Solomon uses everything in his power to search for the meaning of life. He uses wealth, food, companionship, everything that the world could offer him, and it was all meaningless to him. But what Solomon was able to do is finally teach us something about Jesus, even if he didn't realize he was doing it. Even if it was sort of unintentional. What he teaches us about Jesus is that everything in this life is meaningless without him. That's the one thing Solomon didn't have in his search. But in this case, Solomon may not have been able to fully see that. Maybe it takes someone else. Maybe that's why we have someone else here recapping what Solomon said, able to put it all to the point for us. And so we continue then to read what's written in verses 11 and then the first part of verse 12. The words of the wise are like goads, collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Solomon didn't know the full revelation of God that we see in Jesus Christ. But he was an exceedingly wise king, a very wise king. And we benefit still from his wisdom. In many of the biblical books, many of the Proverbs, maybe most of them were written by Solomon. Ecclesiastes here, we benefit from Solomon's wisdom in Ecclesiastes. Even to some extent, Song of Songs, we benefit there from his wisdom. But here's a question. Why are Solomon's writings included in the Bible and other wise sayings are not? Solomon didn't know the full revelation of Jesus Christ. So why not include teachings like those of Buddha or Socrates or Confucius or the Dalai Lama? These are widely considered to be wise men, and they didn't know Jesus either. So why include Solomon's writings but not these others in the Bible? Well, verse 11 gives us the answer to that. In verse 11 it says, the words of the wise are like goads, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Now, up until this point, Solomon has been called the teacher, and in some cases the king, but we've never seen this yet. Why all of a sudden is Solomon shifted from the teacher to the one shepherd? And the answer is because this verse isn't about Solomon. This verse is about the God of heaven and earth, the one shepherd of Israel. In Solomon's life, I don't know how much you know about Solomon, how much you've studied him in the scriptures, but in Solomon's life, right before he began to reign over Israel as king, God appeared to him. In 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 7, God appeared to Solomon and said this, "Solomon, ask for whatever you want me to give you." Wouldn't that be nice to have God appear before you and say, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you"? Well, he did it for Solomon. And you know what Solomon asked for? He asked for God's wisdom to govern God's people. And we learned that a few verses after that, God gives him that wisdom. And that is why Solomon's wisdom is in the Bible. Because it's not his. It's the wisdom of the one shepherd. It's the wisdom of God. Sometimes there's confusion about this topic. You know, especially as you begin to think about, say, Muhammad and Islam. And some people will say, well, why don't we include the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad in the Bible or the teachings of Islam? After all, they're an Abrahamic religion, aren't they? Doesn't Muhammad worship the same God of Abraham and of Moses and of Solomon and of David? And so it's important that I be really clear in my answer to this question. The answer is a very firm no. The God that Solomon worshiped, the God that we worship, is the one shepherd. And I want to share with you something that Jesus said. I don't want this to wash over on you. Let this sink in. In John chapter 10, verse 11, Jesus says this, "I am the good shepherd." The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. See, any other God other than the one who is revealed completely in the person of Christ is a false god and an idol and a lie. The reason that Solomon's wisdom is included in the Bible is because it's the wisdom of the shepherd. What Jesus says and what his apostles have written is included in the Bible because Jesus himself is the good shepherd. Look at your Bibles if you have them open. Pay special attention to verse 11 there. It's amazing, remarkable to consider, providential even, prophetic. The symbolism is wonderful. That 2,000 years before our good shepherd was nailed to the cross for our sins, this was written. His collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Amazing, isn't it? Astonishing, wonderful. Okay, let's look at the last part then of verse 12. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. So in this verse, is the Bible coming out as anti-intellectual? Is the Bible advising us to stay away from all that book learning? No, I don't think so. In fact, education is very helpful in almost every arena in life, and Solomon himself was a supremely well-educated student. There are many things that what we can learn from the education of this world are very beneficial. What is intended in this verse is a reminder that the benefits of what we can learn in this world are limited in their scope. They're not the answer to everything. So if you have all the education in the world, the education of this world can teach you how to figure out pi to the 30th decimal place. But it can never teach you the immeasurable value that you have to your Creator. Only God's Word can do that. Secular books can teach you everything from how to measure the distance between stars to how to win friends and influence people. But one thing they can never teach you is how to have a personal relationship with the God of heaven and earth. Only the Bible can do that. Now what you can do is you can do what Solomon did if you really wanted to. You can search like crazy and study yourself silly, trying to find the meaning and the answer to your life. But in the end, you know what Solomon says about that? Much study wearies the body. This is such a timely truth for us. I think there's a major misunderstanding and misconception that pervades in our culture, especially our Western, very well-educated culture. And it's a feeling that our divisions and our problems in society stem from a lack of education. As though if ignorant people could just be more educated, then maybe we would be healthier. Then maybe we would be more equitable, more peaceful as a people. But here's what Solomon did. He was more educated than probably any of us in this room will be. Solomon was a very educated man, and yet he was sick because he couldn't find the meaning of life. He was angry that he saw wicked people prosper and he saw righteous people persecuted. He was dismayed because he saw there was no end to this endless cycle of things that we go through as humans. Education didn't solve that problem for Solomon, and it won't solve the problem for us. Our problem is not a lack of education, but a lack of faith in Jesus Christ. Faith that he is who he says that he is. Our Alpha, our Omega, our beginning and our end, our everything, our King. Our problem, the answer to our problem, is not further education, but the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let's look at verse 13 then. Now all has been heard, and here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. I don't know, you probably know this. Jesus says something very similar to this when the Pharisees ask him. They say, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And you know what his answer is? Well, I'll read it to you. Jesus says this. Note how similar it is to verse 13 that we just read. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second's like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Does that make you feel good? Makes a lot of people feel good. In fact, in some form, basically, it's what every religion in the world teaches, sort of. Basically, honor God and be nice to others. That's at the base of basically every religion. And as it's written in our text here, it says, fear God and keep his commandments. But you know, it doesn't make me feel good. You know why? Because I read very carefully what Jesus said. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Do you do that? Are all your affections and all your efforts and all your desires always and unhesitatingly for God? Mine aren't. I mess that up a lot. Here's the second thing he says. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor, that's nice. But as yourself, love them as yourself? Well, that's hard. And here's an honest moment. Most of the time, I love my neighbor, but not to this degree. So it's as if Jesus said, John, basically there are just two things you have to do. Number one, love God, and number two, love your neighbor. And I messed them both up. I failed on both counts. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I'm betting I'm not the only one in this sanctuary that failed on those accounts, am I? What have you done? Who have you hurt? Now, some might hear this and they'd respond saying, well, John, hang on, John. You're missing the point. The point is to get better and better at loving God and better at loving your neighbor. But what point is enough? I mean, is it enough? Are you finally a good person in God's eyes if you just do one thing that's good? Well, forgive the cliche, but I bet Adolf Hitler even did one thing that was good at some point in his life. Does that make him a good person? Well, maybe we draw the line at like 95%. When 95% of your thoughts and actions are good, then you're finally considered to be a good person, right? Then God would say, okay, now you can come on in. 95%, right? But I bet even Mother Teresa had 5% or more of her thoughts that occasionally wandered away and went where they shouldn't have gone. So even she wouldn't have been good by that standard then, right? And this is so terrifying to me. These verses that Jesus offers us are terrifying, and they should be to you too. All the religions in the world offer this same terrifying perspective. Do more good, and it's never enough. Avoid more evil, and it's never enough. And it's especially terrifying in light of what this last verse says. Look at verse 14. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Now, I've done enough publicly ridiculous and shameful things to be considered condemned. Certainly I have, not to mention the things that are hidden. That's scary, isn't it? To have the hidden things that we've done revealed. But it will be. We don't want other people to know the hidden things that we've done, but even people are not the ones who will judge us. It's God, and God knows. All the religions and all the philosophies of the world leave us with no real answer for this. Do more good? Woe is me. Avoid more evil? I'm doomed. But there is good news, remarkably good news, but it comes only through the gospel of Jesus Christ. What Solomon could not find, brothers and sisters, what Solomon was searching this entire book for and he couldn't find, I'm going to show it to you right now. If you have your Bibles, and I hope you do, look at Romans chapter 3. We're going to start at verse 21. If you don't have a Bible, if you don't have your own Bible, if you're using the Pew Bible, that's what I'm trying to say, it's on page 1750. This is what Solomon was looking for, and he couldn't find it. I'll show it to you. Romans chapter 3, verse 21. But now, a righteousness from God apart from the law. Remember God's law? The commandments that we couldn't keep? We couldn't be good enough? We couldn't avoid sin enough? But here's what this verse says, that there is a righteousness apart from the law. What is it? Well, listen. But now a righteousness from God apart from the law has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness from God comes through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There's no difference, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified freely by the grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. This is what you were made for. This is what the meaning of life is, to be redeemed by the Redeemer. And listen to how that happens in verse 25. God presented him as the one who would turn aside his wrath, taking away sin through faith in his blood. Now, what does that mean? Faith in his blood. It means Jesus was crucified a painful, bloody death on the cross as God's judgment against sin, even though Jesus himself was without sin. Why did he do that? Why would a sinless man suffer this terrible wrath of God against sin when he had no sin? Well, so that his death and his blood and his judgment would take the place of your death and your blood and your judgment. And if you truly believe that the shed blood of our Lord Christ has that power for you, and you repent of the sin that makes it necessary, then you've been made righteous, right with God. That's the faith in his blood. And that's what Solomon was looking for. We see in the whole book of Ecclesiastes that Solomon acknowledges things aren't the way that they should be. They're supposed to be. And we know that to be true too, don't we? We know that in many ways we see the world that's broken, and we look inside ourselves and we see that in there it's broken too. So how do these broken things come back together? It seems so meaningless. Except we have one thing that Solomon didn't. And it turns out that it's that one thing that adds the very meaning to life. Forgiveness and new life that comes through Jesus Christ. May this word be for the glory of God and the joy of his people.
Amen.